Salafalava, welcome to the Millennium Native Forest Reserve here in Whakaoriori, Masterton. We hope this visit helps you connect with the beauty of Aotearoa's native forest.
This 5-hectare reserve was once a boggy wasteland with scarcely a native tree in sight. However, since its founding in 1993, an extraordinary collective of volunteers and community organisations have brought new life to the land, crafting it into a vibrant forest ecosystem. Crisscrossing the reserve are over 2 kilometres of easy walking trails, guiding you through a variety of diverse environments of tranquil wetlands, lush woodlands and peaceful spots perfect for resting or enjoying a picnic. Each trail is clearly marked on a map that you can find by each of the reserve's entrances. Consider taking a photo before you set off. It's easy to lose your bearings in this maze-like network of paths. 7 locations along the trails feature posts with QR codes, which link to a short film. You will learn about the creation of the reserve and the care of its trees, lakes and waterways that are now home to many different birds and the abundant aquatic life both above and below the surface. Take your time as you walk around and keep a keen eye out. You might be lucky enough to spot one of the reserve's more elusive residents, like the weta, or a skink, or even a gecko hiding in a tree.
Please now find your way onto the next point on the trail and discover the story of how Reserve was brought to life. Enjoy your journey.
Welcome to the bridge at the southern end of the main lake. We're right in front of you is Kite Island. Believe it or not, this view was very different in the early 20th century. Back then it was just open pasture, a handful of non-native trees and a few ponds to complete the picture.
Going back even further to the early 1900s, the land was leased by the Wellington Acclimatisation Society. Their big idea was to create a trout farm. The land around the hatchery was left largely undeveloped, as can be seen in this aerial photo. Then in 1949, the 48-acre site was acquired by the Masterton Trust Lands Trust. Later in the 1970s, the Trust proposed a 33-acre high-class residential suburb called Springvale, which also would include a picturesque lake. Work began in May 1977, digging out the swampy ground with the addition of a small island in the middle. Some boys from Marston Intermediate School rode over to plant flax, toy and lilies. But as costs for the project rose, it was finally decided that Springvale was too expensive and was cancelled. In 1993 though, a bright new vision emerged to transform the land into a native forest reserve. One of the key players was Warwick Dean, together with other members of the Masterton South Rotary Club.
I could see a potential of bringing back native plants and then encouraging native birds to return to the area. And I then made it an approach to the Trust Lands Trust to see if it would be able to be returned to its native bush, like originally before the Europeans came.
An agreement with Masterton Trust Lands Trust was signed for what was then called the Hillcrest Reserve. Aided by community volunteers, the Masterton South Rotary Club then set to work alongside the Forest and Bird Society and heaps of local school children. First, non-native trees and invasive bushes were cut and cleared out. Holes were then dug by tractor and planting in the bare landscape was begun. Another major task was tackling the sorry state of the main lake. One man had a vision for how it could be transformed.
The island originally was just a low little mound, and it was a real mess. There was trees falling into the lake, there were trees from the island falling out. It wasn't a pretty sight.
So Merv and the volunteer team decided to drain the lake to improve the flow of water that flowed into the Kurupuni stream.
All this was mud down here, sort of semi-dry mud with trees coming down, and then Buchanan's came in with their big digger and we tidied everything up, pushed it all up onto the island and forming a much bigger island. We then filled in the cut in the embankment here and refilled the lake.
With the lake finished, Merv Kite then came up with another grand idea for enjoying the reserve.
I was determined that we were going to have tracks that meandered, so you couldn't really see far in front of you. You're always coming around a corner and there was always a different vista in front of you. And
to build the tracks, a local quarry company would donate several tons of riverbed stone each week for a group of local lads.
on the Saturday morning, the community service boys, who'd transgressed, would come down and they'd get on the wheelbarrows. Some of them were forestry boys, and there were some of them who were boy racers from town who had never lifted anything heavy in their life. So the forestry boys enjoyed it and the boy racers didn't.
Over the years, many groups and individuals have contributed their time and efforts. In particular, since 2003, a charitable group called Friends of Millennium Native Forest Reserve, under a QE2 covenant, has helped change a swampy grassland into a thriving and lush forest.
Exceeded our expectations, it really has, and to see school groups coming through and people walking their dogs, and you see the fruition of all our work now. Well worth it, really is. You feel as though you're leaving a legacy. Yeah.
At the next stop, you will discover in more detail the challenges, the achievements, and yes, also the setbacks in establishing a native forest from scratch. Enjoy your journey.
Welcome to the wetlands. With years of care, patience and persistence, it has helped to firmly establish this rich variety of trees, shrubs and native grasses that you see in front of you. Along the way, there have been many successes and of course, some setbacks.
One of the key elements for the regeneration of the reserve has been the shade house, right next to the old trout hatchery. With a double level of shells for the pots and its neat irrigation system, it is the perfect environment to raise thousands of native tree saplings that are now growing in the forest. In the early days, it was a domain of one long-term volunteer, Len Francis.
He and his wife adopted the shade house as their little kingdom. When I came here, there was a sign on the front, and the shade house was actually nicknamed Len's Den.
Today, the shade house is still in use, with school children and volunteers welcome to lend a hand with transplanting the many seedlings collected from the reserve.
We plant 1,000 to 1,500 plants a year into the reserve. To develop a forest, it does help to have some understanding of the dynamics of it. that you do have to provide shelter for the young seedlings. You do have to consider irrigation. You do have to consider what would naturally grow in particular areas. And so we've got different plants at different ages and stages.
Will it still grow?
Yes, it'll still grow.
Yay!
They were created to grow. I've got a bit of a feel for what goes where and why and when and how. I try and be a bit sensible. But sometimes if other people have planted areas, I think, why did you put that in there? But that's fine. Sometimes I've had to move plants because I just know they are just not going to survive there. But that's fine. People do what they can, and it's great.
Once seedlings have firmly taken root and reached a certain height, they are then moved to the outside shade shelter for hardening up before planting in the forest.
Look at this teamwork.
As the forest continues to develop, it naturally generates a steady and abundant supply of new plants, nurtured by falling seeds, berries, and those carried in by visiting birds.
Oh, look at that, you're a professional. It's good to keep that soil on there. Don't jiggle the soil off. I'm so pleased about this. It breaks my heart when I see seedlings like that and I haven't got time to rescue them. So this is such a bonus. Oh, I'm all happy. We're just trying to facilitate the natural processes, speed it up a bit really. If you left this area, didn't manage it, just left it completely, maybe in 50, 100 years your native bush would have come through. We're just trying to speed up that natural process and trying to avoid invasion by, weed species that would slow down that process.
Essential to the development and maintenance of the reserve is the team of dedicated volunteers and the regular Saturday working bees, where jobs are handed out, like keeping the tracks walkable.
And we're basically looking to line these paths here, and if some could be spread just along here, it gets awfully wet.
Another task might involve heading out to Kite Island to remove invasive blackberry and ivy, smothering native trees and plants.
I think people enjoy working in the working bees. They enjoy the fellowship, they enjoy the camaraderie, getting out in the open, working together on a project, on a particular area, seeing the progress we make, the sense of achievement, the sense of being part of something bigger than any of us could do on our own. We don't have a system whereby there's a foreman and we tell everyone what to do. We need people who've got the initiative and the enthusiasm to just do what they think needs to be done within reason. Absolutely have needed and still need people who are generous with their time, their talents, whatever they can do. We welcome anyone in any capacity. It takes a lot of volunteer hours. You need groups of people who are willing to commit to it for the long haul. Those people can change over the years, but you still need a core of people who have the vision and the passion to make it work.
Thanks to Christine and the Army of Helpers, the reserve isn't just a place to visit, it's an example of what a community coming together can achieve. On the way to your next stop, why not take a closer look at the variety of trees? Happy exploring, and remember, there's always room for one more volunteer. Enjoy your journey.
Welcome to the northwest corner of the reserve.
You are now standing above a network of springs and streams that are home to many native life. But who would have thought that the area is also sitting above a major earthquake fault line?
One remarkable result of being on a fault line is the way it forces water from underground upwards to the surface. This creates the springs, known as Punawai in Māori, that flow through the reserve and into the Kuripuni stream.
This is one of multiple punawai bubbling to the surface along this fault line or this cliff face where the water pushes to the surface. This is a perfect place for insects, invertebrate, and the food chain starts in places like this, springing forth along this particular fault line in the middle of Masterton. When you're walking through Millennium Reserve, it's quite easy to miss places like this because they do look insignificant, but when you look a little bit closer, you realise how this is the source of life, and culturally it's a place of healing and a sanctuary for being quiet and connecting to nature.
The pure water that flows from the reserve's many punawai provides a perfect ecosystem for native species to thrive, like the koda.
Found one. Right in the corner there. Got it. Decent size, but they can get quite a bit bigger. The biggest one I've seen is as big as my hand. They swim with their tail, like they've got the two pincers at the front where they use to feed themselves. And here, probably the top predator, and quite happy in here. So what I'll do is I'll just grab her. I'm just going to put her back. Go for it. All right. There we go. Oh, it's just so cool to see, eh?
Also to be found among the reserve's aquatic residents are its protected long and short fin eels.
If I just throw it in,
Yeah, just chuck it in the middle.
you can see the eel, look.
Yeah.
Oh, how can you tell them apart, like male and female?
Male and female. It's difficult when they're smaller. Females get a lot bigger than males, so anything over a metre, it's pretty much
Yeah, because that
guaranteed
one's
to be.
huge.
Yeah, it should be a female, I'd say. Eels, they tell you about the health of a stream. They can't really handle like stagnant water.
Yeah.
I'd like to think they'll be here, forever.
While the naturally occurring springs in the reserve produce pure water, some streams flow in from the outside. Monitoring their water quality is important to maintain the natural ecosystem.
We are going to have a look at the quality of the water flowing through here. We have this here, and that'll read the conductivity of the water. So what we're measuring is basically how much stuff is in there. It could be runoff from the road, like chemicals from the tyres or the exhaust fumes, or if somebody dumped paint down their drain, yeah, any of those sorts of things. So stick it in the water, make sure it's fully in. So what does the top number read?
84.
84, so that was the conductivity, so we would say that this is pretty clean water.
The reserve's wetlands and streams serve as vital habitats, offering food, shelter and breeding grounds for aquatic life, while also acting as ecological corridors for migratory birds. Ensuring the health and balance of this natural ecosystem requires ongoing care and preservation.
The Friends of the Reserve are incredible at keeping on top of these things. They do regular maintenance, but it's a lot of work.
Oh,
I like this one.
Yes, this looks a bit different, hey? I hope that by bringing these school students into this space and talking about the work that has gone into creating this reserve, we inspire them to, you know, they can do their little bit in their backyard, and then hopefully as they grow up they'll be wanting to do even more than that and look at creating systems like this in other areas.
As you can see, every part of the reserve has its own story to tell. So, as you head off to your next spot on the map, don't forget to check out one of the many waterways. Pause, listen for a moment, and enjoy the pure energy of the water. Enjoy your journey.
Welcome to the upper trail of the Millennium Native Forest Reserve. Why not take a seat here at the Percy Braggins bench, where you can relax, enjoy the view, and take in the sounds of the forest.
Right from the start in the 1990s, the reserve's community of volunteers was set on creating a forest and a place for everyone to enjoy. An early pioneer and chairman of the Friends of the Millennium was George Bain.
When it started, that's a photograph of it, with fence, which we didn't want anymore, because that was a big swamp, and they've just filled it in. That's a picture of a small tree, which only exists because I'm there watering it with my watering can.
George still has an active hand at the reserve, keeping the trails tidy for visitors.
See, normally I'd snip these as I walk along, because anything that intrudes on me would intrude on other people as well. So I just keep things a bit trimmed. But I've done great work on making these paths. And if you were growing just a native forest just for a native forest, well, of course you wouldn't do this, but there is this aspect that no, we want people to be able to walk around and not get bit stuck in their eye or whatever.
Creating walking trails in the reserve was just the beginning. Solutions were also needed to cross all the streams and boggy terrain. One man rose to the challenge, Percy Braggins. He single-handedly constructed all the boardwalks and bridges to ensure the reserve could be enjoyed by everyone, regardless of age or ability.
The boardwalk has been here for decades now, and it's constructed in a way that you're safe walking on it, won't slip.
Percy's tireless energy didn't just stop at boardwalks. He also helped build several viewing platforms and some of the benches throughout the reserve.
This is one of my favourite little seats, this one, because it's just really nice view. A little bit of clear water even, and ducks, and little birds diving all over the water.
Over the years, many organisations, volunteers and key individuals have dedicated their time and effort to maintain and improve the experience of being in the reserve.
Hi!
Special acknowledgement goes to Graham Pearce, whose work is evident in the building projects and signage, as well as the various way out signs that safely guide visitors throughout the reserve.
We had one woman in some distress because she found herself going round and round and was lost.
Problems like this are raised at the Friends of the Millennium meetings. Here, a core group of members deal with the everyday management of the reserve, giving reports, sorting finances, and having the odd cup of tea.
You've got to have organisation, you've got to have things like access to accounting, because thousands and thousands of dollars are represented here in this thing. Behind a project like this is a body of people who are not necessarily the ones who are planting the trees. You've got to have fundraising events, expertise in calling together people who are of a like mind.
While the Friends of the Millennium diligently work behind the scenes, visitors are encouraged to fully experience and explore every aspect the reserve has to offer.
Have to make a deliberate decision at a given point. No. Stop thinking and just appreciate. Just appreciate. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. Yeah, that's very nice.
I hope you enjoyed this part of the forest, and remember, the reserve welcomes people to help. You could join a working bee, become a friend of the Millennium Native Forest Reserve, or donate to help keep the trails open and the birds singing. Enjoy the next part of your journey.
Nau mahare mai ki te manawa o tēnei whenua taurikura o tātou. I ngā rā o mua nui ngā rākau ki tēnei ngahere. Kei te mōhio koutou e tahi o nei rākau.
Even from a distance you can see different leaf shapes. There's a manuka over there which is a lot darker, and when you get closer it might have the little green leaves on it. It just adds to your ability to be able to recognise trees and plants from a distance, or of course closer. When kids are out and they slow down a bit is when they start to see, rather than just rushing by and there's a tree that looks like a whole lot of other trees. Just being out there is really cool, but extra neat when you start to see things.
Before the founding of Masterton in 1854, this land on the reserve made up part of the vast Kurupuni forest that stretched between the Wainawa and Waipoua rivers. For local Māori, this forest was their home. The hapu also leased part of their ancestral lands before it was sold to Victoria, Queen of England in 1858 for £350. Overseas settlers then bought various 40-acre lots, including Lot 33, which is now the reserve. Tree by tree, the forest was then felled, providing housing for settlers and fencing for livestock. Today, educators like Joseph are preserving Māori knowledge of the forest. Future generations are taught how native trees and plants serve as a natural form of medicine called rongwa and sustain life in many other countless ways.
The tea talkie berries can take a couple of years to develop into maturity, and you can make oil out of it. You can make perfume.
Is the perfume said sweet or fruity?
It's sweet because you can add other tree leaves to it as well, so you can kind of adjust the smell according to what you're mixing. And this is rangiora. People over time have used it as toilet paper when they're out in the bush because it has a big wide leaf, sometimes referred to as bushman's wipe. One other use of it, in the old days, if you were going on a track somewhere and you wanted to attract someone's attention, you could put that down and make it like an arrow, a number of leaves with the white side up, and leave some kind of signal.
What would happen if you ate that?
You'd probably get a very sore tummy and then be violently ill. That's why it's useful to know which bits you can't use for a certain purpose, and especially that you can't eat. This is ake ake, meaning forever and ever, and very hard, durable wood. you can make implements and tools where you want a heavy, strong wood that's going to last for a long time. Just give it a tap. You can tell it's really, really hard. This plant is koromiko, and it's used to stop dysentery in other got the runs and that stomach complaints, and you can eat it. It makes your stomach feel better. And they would actually send a whole lot of this stuff over to the soldiers in the Second World War, so that if they got the runs or anything like that, they'd be able to have some koromiko and it'll fix them up. You want to try it? Right throughout here, there's all these things that can help you to fix health problems. The whole big university, you know, like a big wānanga just being in the forest. The tōtara is a sacred tree. It represents Tāne Mahuta, atua of the forest, and all of his children are the plants and the trees. They bred berries about that big, lots of them, and they're quite juicy and tasty.
How old is the tree?
Would have been planted since 1994 when the reserve was established. Older trees are thought to be 800 to 1,000 years old, older than people have been around here. I do think that plants and trees have mauri, have a life force. Papa toa nukui under our feet, and then rangi nui, the sky there, and tamanui te rā, the sun just poking through the trees there. It's life. Life together, and you come into somewhere like here, it's just uplifting. It makes you feel good inside. And it's in town. It's amazing.
Ko te ngahere o tō tātou whenua taurikura, kei te hoki ora pai mai ana I nainei, me te ātāhua hoki. He momo o kararehe me ngā rākau, kua tepu pai ana ki tēnei whenua. Me te aki tātou I tō tātou whenua, kia tepu pai ai tō tātou taiao.
Finally made it to one of the reserve's viewing platforms. Not so long ago, this place was silent, apart from a few cars passing. Now, if you listen carefully, you can hear the forest alive with the calls of tui, piwakawaka and the ruru that call out at night.
Playing an important role in the success of the reserve is the QE2 National Trust. Through voluntary covenants, the Trust helps private landowners safeguard biodiversity, which provides shelter and a variety of food for wildlife, as well as creating a thriving forest ecosystem.
A little bit of depth of leaf litter here, good humus starting to develop in here. This is a pretty tough act to create a forest on essentially what was pasture. It was a tough place to plant, freezing cold in winter, scorching hot in summer. The early stages of forest restoration is about building up humus. So we have plants that have a lot of leaf drop. Lovely stuff, look at that. Wow. Lots of tree roots right throughout the soil, the root systems from all the surrounding plants. The more time progresses, the more the forest will exert its natural processes. So what will happen, while it's very densely planted and there are lots of things popping up here and there, this is going to naturally thin out.
Also playing a vital role in forest development are fungi, breaking down fallen wood and plant matter, returning essential nutrients to the soil. And by planting a diverse variety of native trees, shrubs and plants, the forest has a greater chance of success for a balanced and healthy ecosystem.
Here on the corner of the track we've got titoki. Their biggest role is to provide this canopy at height that in turn are big climax species like kahikatea. If they want their share of light, they have to pierce this lower canopy. in a few hundred years that people will come through and see a big, tall, towering tree, and it's these guys that have actually played their role in producing that.
The reserve is also abundant with shrubs and small trees, each with their own diverse attributes, like the faux, the world's lightest wood.
It's a plant that is very frost tender, so it has to be in a sheltered position, but it grows really quickly, and it's the only spiky fruited plant in New Zealand. Very juvenile at the moment, but they will split open with lots of white seeds, so it's quite unique.
Plants also have their unique role. Located by the Hillcrest entrance is Piranoa, one of New Zealand's 8 mistletoe species.
In this case, it's using totara as a host, so a mistletoe has to get all its water and all its nutrients by putting its roots into a living tree. They have bright orange fruit, which is a great bird feeder. Unless you planted them, the odds on these guys producing a new plant are pretty low.
The white mistletoe also needs a helping hand.
If we want to introduce it, pluck out one of those fruits and we give it a squeeze, we put it in our mouth, get some digestive juices on it, and then you see it gets tacky. The place we need to put it on a host, and Tarata is a good host, on that node. Okay, and there it is there. Then in 4 years it'll start having fruit just like this. It's an important food source.
As the reserve's ecosystem develops, it provides a suitable habitat for more elusive animal species to move into, like the Naheri gecko.
They like to hang out at the edges of branches, at tops of trees, away from cats, most rats and that sort of stuff. So there's every chance there could be Naheri geckos out here. Pretty much all New Zealand geckos, including Naheri geckos, are endangered. If you don't have the habitat, you don't have any hope. Once you've got the habitat, pest control will give them a fighting chance.
With rats, mice and possums amongst the threats, Whakaoriori predator-free Masterton is working hard to protect native reptiles like the ground-based Rokawa gecko.
They're New Zealand's hide and seek champions. That's their whole thing, it's not to be seen. These guys like it messy, like nooks and crannies where they can hide. Fallen tree branches, lots of leaves, rock piles. They'll find a nice little spot where they're happy. Wait there for the food to come to them.
By creating the right conditions, the reserve is able to attract other reptiles from around Wairarapa, like the barking gecko.
Setting up a reserve like this, just planting it up and walking away, you've done half the job. You need to create a safe environment so that the existing lizards in the area can come here, thrive and multiply. There's every chance that with this beautiful space that's been created, they would have made it in here. Leave them be, give them a bit of habitat, a bit of pest control, and they will flourish. Once you get that balance, then you start creating that self-sustaining system. Whereas as humans, we can a little bit step back and just enjoy the beauty of these guys.
Thank you for reaching the end of your journey through the reserve. So maybe next time you can come plant a tree on a working bee, or just bring a friend who hasn't been here before, because every little bit of love helps keep this forest alive. And remember, if you can't find your way out, look for those handy out signs. Ka kite anō, and see you back here soon.